Stephen K. Bannon is on assignment today. You're in the War Room with Raheem Kassam, Jack Maxey, Greg Manns, episode 250 here on America's Voice on the John Fredericks Radio Network with our local radio partners across the nation on G News and GTV. And we're very grateful for all of you guys out there who are sharing the show, who are liking the show, who are tweeting the show, who are parlaying the show, who are taking the time out of your busy days and your stressful days right now to make sure that as many people as possible get to the War Room Pandemic Show. We're on podcast, over 10 million downloads, thanks to you guys. And every single subscription on every single download platform that you give us pushes us back up the charts, means more people see us. So if you haven't subscribed yet, if you haven't left a review yet, make sure you head on over Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Luminary, whatever you use to download this show. Make sure you head on over there, subscribe, and leave us a review. We prefer 5 stars. I'll take 4 because of the poor production quality from Vish Bura, but Vish is Vish again. By the way, at some point, Vish, you did such a great job when you came on the show last week to talk about the Uncle Tom movie that you're part of. I think more of the audience want to hear from more of Vish, so we might have to set you up a microphone for that you can't see in the other side of the War Room. But Vish Bura, we have him off in the corner. He's got like a little pen surrounding him, and there's some hay bales and things like that. Vish Bura is our producer extraordinaire. I want to turn now in this segment. You know, we've talked about where we are, why we got here. We get that. There's more to explain, of course. There's always more to deep dive into. It's something I'm really proud of the fact that we do over at the National Pulse every day, as we go through who the players are, how they're influencing this stuff. We're going to have another story pop today that you guys are going to want to get all over about the New York Times Journalism School, because remember, the New York Times is the ones in the back of the 1619 project, effectively the project to tear down America and its history. So you're going to want to pay attention to all of that. I want to turn now, action. Jack Maxey, introduce our guest and tell us where we are.
Maria Luisa Hawkins, well-known reporter from Italy, really one of the great friends of our show. She was with us early on, as the longtime listeners will know, talking to us about the horror that was going on in Italy in March just a few months ago. Really a fantastic person with incredible insights, especially concerning Italy, especially concerning what's going on with the Belt and Road Initiative there, what's happening in terms of perhaps some purchases that might be going on in Italy. She's going to give us some insight on what's happening in Europe, because what's happening there is going to affect us. And she also is a great person to give us some insight about what's happening here in America. She spent 20 years here and has a real understanding of our culture from afar.
Maria Luisa, host of Mediaset, lead anchor at Mediaset. Welcome to the show. Jack, first questions to you.
Well, I don't know if the first questions is fair. I think really what I'd love to hear from you, Maria Luisa, is what's going on in Italy? What's it feel like on the streets? I mean, it was literally, both you and I were almost in tears the last time we were talking about how horrible it was, and it's interesting to see Italy pick itself up. But can you tell us about what's next there?
We were discussing what was happening 5 months ago. Remember, I think I was sitting in on the first show about the pandemic. Nobody believed what was actually going to happen, and Italy was the first country to be definitely struck, hurt by the pandemic. Now, 5 months in, we have 35,000 people dead. We have 200,000 people under contagion, and the feeling of exhaustion, depression, and most of all, the feeling that this is not going away. It has devastated lives. It has devastated a country, the spirit of a country, the economy of a nation, and most of all, there is no resurrection from something that is latent and is blatantly under our eyes, and we can't do anything about it. So day in and day out, we're assisting to a death bulletin of exhaustive but thorough information that leave us no way out, if not hope for a vaccine. This is where we are right now. New contagions in the northern regions. Milan is still very much struck. It's better in the south, but as I said, I think you were referring to what's happening in terms of messes and churches not reopening. It's a dire situation, and the morale of the country now is painfully down. This country needs an awakening. The country needs to go back. The country needs to breathe. The country needs hope. 5 months is a long time to stay in and just hear bad news, which is pretty much what's been happening.
Now, Maria
And
Louise,
assist to deaths, and we've discussed it.
one of the things I was curious about, remember when they shut down the north of Italy and then many people began streaming south? We never really saw an explosion of cases in the south of Italy like we saw around Milan and Turin, did we?
No, we did not. But we did see the explosion, the exponential explosion happening in northern Italy, Jack. And we're still seeing it now because of something that was really never reported in the mainstream media and was never really taken into consideration. The fact that COVID-19 was present in Italy at the beginning of December. There was a sewage study done that reported that traces of COVID-19 were in Milan and in Turin, which of course are high industrialized cities and cities with the most contact with the Chinese population have had COVID for weeks now. So as Contagion keeps promulgating in these northern cities, we're seeing that southern Italy, with a much more open attitude and a careful but more open attitude, is not as struck by COVID as northern Italy at all. But the presence of the Chinese, and I think Dr. Fauci referred to it, COVID was brought into Italy by the Chinese, by Chinese tourists, I would argue by Chinese industrialists, and we'll get to that later, is really a case study on something that we really do not want to discuss. The fact that COVID has been with us, brought in by China, by the Chinese industrialists, by the Chinese tourists, weeks before it was ever announced. Which explains why now, as much as Milan wants to reopen and wants to breathe again, new contagions and and the situation is not getting better as people would hope. Better, but not as better as they would hope.
How is the feeling on the street amongst Italians? I mean, obviously this came from China. We were not warned about it. The Italian people had it mixing inside their population for over a month. We realized that Italy is the only country in Europe who has really signed on to the Belt and Road Initiative. They've taken on debt with China.
First country.
Are the people on the street starting to understand that they've been taken advantage by the Communist Party of China, and that perhaps the Belt and Road Initiative is more like a set of handcuffs than a positive thing?
Look, Jack, people understand what they see, what they know, and what they are told. If you don't talk about what the Belt and Road Initiative is, if you don't talk about what the project really means, and it's actually a year ago now that the project was signed. I remember Steve was giving a conference, Steve Bannon was giving a conference in Rome at the Angelica Library the day that Xi Jinping was visiting Italy and was signing the Belt and Road Initiative plan. If you're not told what this is about, if you just are told what the consequences, that the consequences are just great opportunity for the Italian people, for the dormant Italian economy, and for the corrupt Italian political system, then you're going to actually believe that China is a good thing. And this project is actually going to help Italians. If we do not have the kind of journalism that reports, that tells, that discusses, and that uncovers exactly what this means for Italy and for Europe, we're going to have a subservient nation that actually thinks that buying the harbor of Trieste is a good thing because it's going to bring up jobs. This is what this government has done. Our Italian government right now, led by the Five Star movement, completely subservient to the Chinese, a Chinese government, I would argue, with a foreign minister right now who actually says that this is going to be phenomenal opportunity for all of Italy. While we have a GDP that collapsed 9%, it will probably collapse 13% according to data this morning. It just does not make any sense for Italians to understand what's going on if they're not told what's going on. And we go back to the big Chinese propaganda happening all over Europe, all over the United States, but definitely all over Italy.
Well,
Can I just and so we were dealing with some breaking news over here, so I'm sorry if you've already talked about this and I missed it somewhere here. We've got some breaking news and Greg's going to come in with it in just a second. But Maria Luisa, I wanted to get your thoughts on the EU, what the EU has said over the last couple of days about restricting American people coming into Europe. Now, is that something that European member states all agree on, or is that something coming out of Brussels, centralized control in Brussels?
I think this is total retaliation for the visa decision made by the President of the United States a couple days ago. I think it was 24 hours after workers' visas were not renewed, or I think the President said we're going to see what happens at the end of the year. The EU immediately snapped back and said, U.S. citizens are not allowed in because they might be infected. So we're talking about a tit-for-tat type of policy that has never helped Europe. It's definitely not going to help relations between Europe and the United States. And it's giving in to the Chinese just coming in as saviors. Remember the same day that Donald Trump declared national emergency, I think it was March 13th, about COVID, declared COVID national emergency. Our foreign minister, Di Maio, was opening up to the Chinese, and with a great photo op, he was welcoming the Chinese, helping out, bringing masks. I think the masks were actually not working, but masks to Italy. So the answer of the EU, what I want to say is that the answer of the EU about the restrictions is definitely something that is going to benefit the Chinese, hurt our relationships, but it's really not going to go anywhere.
Maria Luisa,
because of this type of policy, obviously.
We're going to have to close down here in 2 minutes, but I want you to answer this question as an Italian, and you're watching us tear down statues around the world. What's the feeling on the street in Italy about this attack of Columbus, turning him into some sort of monger from horror from history, and seeing him torn down in cities and states across America?
As an Italian, I weep. As an historian, I think it's really silly, and I think silly is not the word I want to use. And I think this is really devastating, not only the legacy of Christopher Columbus, but this is really destroying history in the making. Every time you destroy a statue, you decapitate a monument, or you spray paint on some historical figure, you're not doing any justice to history itself. We are nothing without our history, and these are symbols of what we were. History is what's within us. You're not going to cancel that. And by canceling Christopher Columbus, by decapitating his statue, you're just elevating him as a figure.
Maria Luisa,
Americans have a very
just tell us
different relationship from.
Maria Luisa, just tell the audience where we got about 10 seconds left. Just tell the audience where they can get more from you.
They can get more from you, obviously, when you'll invite me back on this show, but I'm an anchor for Italian television media set. I have a book coming out, America, Virus America. We'll discuss what this virus has done. It's the infectious disease that has infected the American elections, but its ramifications and consequences for the relations between the U.S. and Italy. I have a website, and I am the anchor for Italian television reporting on the United States.
We're always grateful for you joining us here, Maria Luisa Rossi-Hawkins, TV host at Media Set. Breaking news, which we're going to bring to you after this cliffhanger, right after the break. Breaking news coming from the Supreme Court. You're not going to want to miss it.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Well, 2020's been a gut punch, and if you're going to succeed, you're going to need every possible advantage. Smart companies run on NetSuite by Oracle, sponsor of this show, the world's #1 cloud business system. Make sure you go to netsuite.com/Bannon. You get your free guide there. Breaking news coming out of the Supreme Court. Greg Mans.
Yep, coming out of the Supreme Court, they've ruled in a 7-2 ruling that the Trump administration can deport some people seeking asylum without allowing them to make their case to a federal judge. So this makes them eligible for quick deportation or expedited removal.
Is this a win?
This is a huge win. Hey, Greg, can you tell me who were the two who voted against?
We'll let Greg Mans dig into it. By the way, when I say breaking news before the break, Greg, that gives you some time to get the detail. But here's the thing as well, just FYI, and I want to make this point to the audience out there. Why is this not leading the Drudge Report right now? Does anybody even go to Drudge anymore? I go to Citizen Free Press, who's been very, very good to this show. Citizen Free Press, which is attracting, it's like a Drudge. They have every breaking story. As I go to Citizen Free Press, and I get the breaking news from the Supreme Court. So make sure you're doing that instead of Drudge Report. We'll get you the details, more details on the Supreme Court ruling. But it looks like a big win, right, Jack?
Oh, it's a big win, and it streamlines things. One of the reasons I'm so curious to know who the two justices were who voted against it, because I think these votes are always an indication of where we're moving as a country. But this is Donald Trump. Somebody just a few days ago, and I'll post it on my Twitter feed. A professor at Berkeley in California wrote a very interesting article. This is not a supporter of Donald Trump, but he was giving the guy props. And I think the title of the article was "Donald Trump is Saving the Constitution," i.e., everything he is doing is going through this lens of constitutional validity, right? I mean, the guy can't even put on shoes in the morning without somebody trying to take you to the Supreme Court. So,
Greg, do you have details?
Jack, to answer your question, Justice Sotomayor and Kagan were the ones.
In my best Gomer Pyle voice, surprise, 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 surprise.
Okay, we may have some technical difficulties here. We're trying to figure that out. Every time I see a black screen in front of me, it means we may not be having the possibility to jump to our guest immediately. But we have in a moment Joel Etienne from Canada, who'll be talking to us about what's going on with Huawei and Canada right there. So we'll jump more into that, Jack.
If we have a second, I'd love to go over something that was released today. It's a study from Massachusetts concerning the multiple deaths that occurred in the old Soldiers' Home in Holyoke. It's called the COVID-19 Outbreak at the Soldiers' Home in Holyoke, an independent investigation conducted for the governor of Massachusetts. And some of the stuff that's in it is just absolutely horrifying. Charlie Baker, the governor, obviously had a little roll of shame yesterday talking about it. Everybody should be ashamed. And this is very important because as we look across the country, more than 50% of the victims have been in old age homes. And I want to read you a piece from this report. This is directly from the report, and it's talking about what happened was they took all the people who were suffering from dementia, both the infected and the uninfected, and they pushed them all into one wing where over 80 of them ended up dying. And this is directly from the report. This decision was a catastrophe. Staff described the move as, quote, total pandemonium, quote, when hell broke loose, and, quote, a nightmare. One staff member remembered thinking, how can they do this? Because this is the most insane thing I have ever seen in my entire life. She felt it was like, quote, moving the concentration camp. We are moving these unknowing veterans off to die. I will never let those images out of my mind.
Wow. So we just for the audience who we're just rejoining, we had a little technical blip here, and as you can see, this is a war room. This is not a multi-million-dollar studio, and we do things, rough and ready. So sometimes we run into technical snafus and snags. Just for the audience, Greg Mans, if we lost the feed, just let's walk back through that breaking Supreme Court news. Start from the very top and take your time.
Yep. So it's a 7-2 ruling with Justices Sotomayor and Kagan in the dissent, and it allows the Trump administration to deport some people, not all, some seeking asylum without making their case to a federal judge.
What does it mean that you have such a large majority in that decision? And then, Greg, will the media play up this decision like they played up the decisions that went against conservatives last week?
There's going to be crickets in the mainstream media about this.
So what does it mean when you have left-leaning judges seeming to side with the conservatives on this one? I mean, does that speak to how self-evident it should be that this is within the administration's power?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the rule of law and what the Supreme Court should uphold, this is a clear-cut case.
Jack, just reiterate for us, because I think some of the people would have lost what you mentioned in the additional ad break that we had.
No, well, we've heard about all these deaths in these old age homes, and really this is the tragedy. And Raheem, we brought this up, I think, when the first statistics on the mortalities came out of China that were published in Lancet early February. We knew who the people were at risk. Our government knew who the people were at risk. The fact that these state and local governments did not protect the people in these old age homes, Donald Trump didn't do that.
Right.
Even Fauci didn't do that. Maybe Fauci's responsible for not telling them to protect themselves. And really, this is a disaster of immense proportions. Think about it. One of the employees just felt like they were moving victims from a concentration camp. They knew that they were all going to die. And I want people held responsible, right? Well, we're talking about holding people responsible. We have seen some of the most impressive people in our country, our veterans. Imagine a guy who's fought through a war and then he gets killed by his own country's indifference and incompetence. Yeah. I want to see people going to jail over this.
Extraordinary. Now, we were supposed to have Joel Etienne on this in this segment just to talk this through what's going on with Canada and this Huawei case, but we're going to hold while we fix our technical difficulties. Joel will either join us in the next block or at the end of this hour if we can solve that. So, gentlemen, live news and live shows. Sometimes we have to pivot, and sometimes we have to figure out where we go, and we can't deal with the technical details that we're dealing with now. Greg Mans,
yep.
you have something to relieve me.
So currently, President Trump is at the Korean War Veterans Memorial. He is joined by First Lady Melania Trump, and it's a beautiful sight. Maybe
we can get maybe this is too much right now, but maybe we can convince the America's Voice guys to put that picture of President Trump there at the War Memorial. It'll be fantastic images coming up here. If we can get that to happen, we'll get that to happen as well. All right, let's reset. Let's go back to something that we talked about in the first hour, because and by the way, look, Steve is on assignment today. He may well be back tomorrow, joining us remotely or in studio. Everything we play, everything by ear here. So I want to get back to something that we didn't really get that much of a chance to get into yesterday, and we mentioned a little bit at the top of the show, which is the ongoing social media censorship.
Are you still banned?
Well, yes, is the answer to that question, but mine is supposedly a temporary suspension based on the fact that I reported a news story this weekend, right? And fine, whatever. Like that's if they want to play games, they can. I've picked up thousands of followers on Twitter in the last 24 hours, much more than I would have done if I had just been sat on there like usual, tweeting my inanities as I do. And I picked up 50,000 followers on Parler as well. A lot of conservatives moving over, and not just because I saw BLM people on Parler yesterday, by the way. So Parler, which make sure you don't accidentally go to the wrong site like Jack Maxey did yesterday morning. But Parler, Parler, is picking up a lot of people. And one of the things I realized, I've said this for a long time now, and I've been wrong about it, was that, these things just turn into echo chambers. Actually, what's really interesting about Parler is not really an echo chamber. What it is, it's turning into a really interesting forum, right? Of over millions of people now subscribe to this thing, mostly on the conservative right, some libertarians, some leftists. You have a lot of international people who are banned in their countries. I think there are a lot of dissident Saudis on the platform who are banned. You probably see a lot of Hong Kong dissidents on there as well. Democracy protesters, Chinese dissidents starting to join on that as well. But it's not an echo chamber. And you know what's nice about it? It's actually fun. It's nice to talk to people who are either like-minded or willing to have conversations or actually get into detail about things and just aren't screaming obscenities at each other. It made me realize this may have been the best thing. Twitter suspending me may have been one of the best things to happen to me recently, because I realized how much time I was spending arguing with people who, don't feed the trolls, right? Just people who are trying over and over to troll me on Twitter, to waste my time, to get me agitated, to take my focus on the things that I'm supposed to be doing away from me. I log on to Parler, I get 15, 20 ideas to explore and things that we can talk about on this show. So again, we're not sponsored by them. This isn't an advertisement. You can go on there if you want. But I'm just saying, this idea that Twitter is the be-all and end-all of discourse in social media, I think you're seeing that come to an end.
Do you know what? This reminds me of an old story that the audience might like. W.C. Fields was sponsored by Lucky Strike back in the 30s, and I think he was making $50,000 a week, but he wanted to get his salary upped. And you remember, this is the height of the Depression.
Yeah.
So Lucky Strike cigarettes are his sponsor, and he starts devoting show after show to his favorite nephew, Chester Fields. After a week, he got his sponsorship. So, Twitter, you better listen to Raheem's demands.
My nephew Parler has been listening to me. He's a very competent young man. All right, we've got to go to an actual break now, not a surprise break. This is War and Pandemic, episode 250. Jack Maxey, Greg Manns, Raheem Kassar. Make sure you head on over. # War and Pandemic on Twitter, on Parler, the YouTube live chat. We're on Facebook Live as well. We'll be right back after...
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
The Birch Gold Group helps Americans diversify their savings with gold and silver, and customers can purchase for physical possession or convert a portion of their IRA or 401k into an IRA backed by physical precious metals. Birch Gold Group specializes in gold IRAs. Now stocks have soared to some of the highest valuations ever. Do not wait for the bottom to fall out. It's time to protect your savings, including your IRA or 401k. Gold and silver are safe havens against uncertainty. We saw how the futures markets responded this morning to the new jobs numbers that came out, and amidst the turmoil of the past few months, gold has soared to recent highs. So you can trust your precious metals purchases to Birch Gold Group. Just look back historically, when the bottom falls out of everything else, gold safeguards savings. The comprehensive 20-page kit reveals how gold and silver can protect your savings and can legally move your IRA or 401k out of risky stocks and bonds into a precious metals IRA. So get your no-cost, no-obligation kit. Go to birchgold.com/Bannon, BIRCH gold.com/Bannon. We're grateful for our sponsors on this show. You're back in the War Room. Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassar, and now joined by the co-producer of the Claws of the Red Dragon movie, alongside Stephen K. Bannon, and contributor to the Epoch Times, lawyer Joel Etienne joins us down the line from Canada. Joel, am I correct?
I'm in Toronto.
I didn't realize they had the internet there. Joel, we're very grateful for you joining us.
We just got it a couple of weeks ago. We're just trying it out. It seems like a fun tool.
Is it good? You enjoyed it so far? Joel, we're very grateful for you joining us here on the show. Hey, speaking of Canada and internet and tech, talk to us a little bit about this Huawei case, because from what I'm hearing, from what you're telling me in the break, and from what I'm seeing on the internet, there's a big capitulation seeming to take place by Canada to the CCP. Just walk us through it, Joel.
Well, you've got the arrest of Meng Wanzhou with respect, under the Canadian Extradition Act. Many moons
Joel,
ago.
start at the beginning of this. Who is this? What happened? Just assume we know nothing.
Okay, so you've got Meng Wanzhou. She is the daughter of the founder of Huawei. Huawei is a tech company out of China, but it's a huge tech company. It's a beast. This man was her father was former military CCP. There's billions of dollars from the CCP funneled into this company. And this company is basically the technology and the architecture behind what we call the Golden Shield. The Golden Shield is China's electronic apparatus that's implemented in the country that allows basically the government to big brother the entirety of the Chinese population in the mainland. Basically, if you talk against the government, you do what they don't like, they'll freeze your bank accounts. You can't travel on the subway. They'll follow you with cameras. They'll tap your phones. They'll get you fired. It's all that electronic shield of surveillance is what 5G, what Huawei does, and what the Chinese government has orchestrated for its population. But the problem for all of us in the rest of in the rest of the planet is that China is exporting these abilities, and so deals with Iran, deals with Venezuela, where they can go, basically those regimes, those rogue regimes can go and further assault, further harass, and further persecute their own population using high tech to do it. So in that context, in Huawei doing bad behavior and bad business dealings, and doing business directly and indirectly with Iran, there was an indictment that came out of the federal the Southern District of New York with respect to this lady who is the CFO, Meng Wanzhou, the daughter of the big CEO. This indictment was for her arrest because Huawei is accused of doing improper dealings with Iran. Of course, Iran is a terrorist state, and this is in contravention of U.S. federal law. She is also not only a Chinese national, but a Canadian citizen. And so as a result of this indictment in the United States, Canada and the United States have an arrangement under extradition, which allows when people are charged in America, the Canadian authorities usually have an obligation to send over bad people, people who are charged. We send them back into the United States. It's under and this is a very, very old and established tradition between Canada and the United States, because back in the days of the outlaws, they would try to hit the border, and we had our Mounties and our CMP. They would go and collect them and send them back to the United States, because we did not want our West to be as full of outlaws the way it was in America. So there's even though we're two sovereign countries, we have a very deep tradition of coordinating law enforcement. And when it comes to extradition, if you're a Canadian person and you've done bad behavior in the United States and America wants you, well, 99.999% of the time, and I only know of one case that's happened over 20 years, you're going back. You're being sent into the United States to face the legal consequences there. So it's just as easy as you're charged in New York State, and Connecticut wants you. Connecticut will fork you over in 24 hours. Extradition is supposed to be that seamless and that easy between the two countries, and it was, and it's been that easy up until the arrest of this lady Meng Wanzhou. And the reason why it's been complicated in Canada is because right after her arrest, China took two good Canadians with good backgrounds who've done nothing wrong, salt of the earth guys, a guy called Michael Kovrig, another gentleman named Michael Spavor, and they were detained in China, and they've been detained, basically kept as hostages to try to force Canada to give up this Meng Wanzhou and not to give her up to China and not send her back to the United States. And Canada's had this gun pointed at its head now for more than a year, and that's the unusual situation.
Wow. Now, I wanted to ask you, one of the things that's come out, and I think this is really what the purpose of this is, you've got several legislators, a former justice of the court there, a former foreign minister who've written this letter to Justin Trudeau to have him release this woman in exchange for this guy. Now, what I don't understand is when the Canadian population are reading this, isn't it clear to them that this is simply a hostage situation? And don't they realize that the consequences for planet Earth of allowing this dark star of CCP, kind of big brother populating itself across the planet is a greater danger, the existential danger, than this one sort of negotiation over these two prisoners?
I'll tell you what, I think there is a big problem, and I think the problem is a communications problem, because to the general Canadian public, we just don't understand how important she is to the United States. You live with the adage of speaking softly and carrying a big stick. That's the Clint Eastwood mantra, etc., right? But that speaking softly is really not helpful here, because we just don't understand why it is that y'all want her, and maybe we think sometimes that maybe you guys are not interested in her and that she's not that important. And if she's not that important, why not send her back? Now, what you should understand is that the intervention that's just occurred is much, much bigger than a few legislators. It's not that. This is the actual hardcore Canadian establishment that is now involved in a massive push to try to convince Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to send her back to China. You've got followers of the former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, a centrist Prime Minister, but an America skeptic. This is the gentleman who, remember when Tony Blair stood with George W. Bush and both, the UK and America went to war in Iraq, right? And you know how, for every war we've had since the First World War, Canada's been arm in arm with the United States. When it came to the Second Iraq War, if you recall, Canada was not there. Canada did not participate in that war, and Canada did not participate in the war because of America's skeptic Prime Minister at the time, Jean Chrétien, right?
So let me ask you.
And yeah.
I just wanted to interrupt, and I understand. So we could say, in effect, that this really is the opportunity for sort of the mainstream left inside Canada to, in effect, really, this isn't even about Huawei. This isn't even about the two things. This is their desire to thumb their nose at their biggest ally. Would you say that's fair? Socially, that's kind of the...
Because I'll tell you what, I think it's more than that, because if it was just the left, I wouldn't be worried because nothing would happen. But this is the left painting it as a Canadian nationalism thing, as a neglect. Basically, they're also painting the idea, and they're really pushing the idea that America doesn't care, that America would be just too happy that Canada sends her back, and and it would be, Canada could wear that, America wouldn't have to wear it, and then everybody could be happy again. And the problem that we have is that they're pushing it from the left into the center, even into the center right. You've got established newspapers like the Globe and Mail. You've got the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Now, it's every day. It's 3 times a day. It's on every news cycle. This idea that the federal authorities are now empowered in Canada with, legally speaking, to allow her to go, despite the fact that we've got courts. The Court of Law in British Columbia has already educated that she can't just be sent back to China. And this push is by a former justice minister, the former chief of staff of Mr. Chrétien, ambassadors, very, very established people. So it's hard to just pin it on the loony left, if you will, because that's not how the Canadian public is understands it. So
let me ask you two.
And what bothers me, let me tell you what really bothers me here, is that I see what's going on now. What happened was last week, those 2 guys who've been detained illegally in China for all these months were actually charged with espionage in China. And that happened basically the day after Pompeo had a meeting with the Chinese officials and did not bend to their extortion, right? So as retribution to Pompeo came to Ottawa, advocated for these guys to be released, the two Michaels, the 2 hostages, right? And the day next after he basically stands strong for North America, this is what China does. So it's a direct rebuke to the administration,
We've got
to the Secretary of
2 minutes
State.
left, so I want to ask you a real quick question. From a legal standpoint, how does the Prime Minister release this person? Is there a legal mechanism that would allow the Prime Minister to override the court in British Columbia and just let this person go as part of his ability, or how does that work? And secondly, because people don't know about this, what would you recommend that the United States Department of Justice do to make sure that the Canadians understand the importance of this?
2 things. I think, the legal mechanism, it's a little bit like your nuclear option in the Senate. Basically, by legal convention, the politicians don't act, but they allow the courts to proceed with the process. But legally speaking, if they actually wanted to, and they would be, it would be the craziest thing, but by legal convention, if they want to, they can. So, it's just like when going from the majority, the +1 in the Senate to the 2/3, we've never done it before, but they actually could.
But it could be. Now, right? Tell us what the Department of Justice should do.
We don't have time for it, Joel. Unfortunately, we got about 30 seconds. Just tell the audience where they can find more from you, Joel.
Well, sure. They can certainly contact us at Epoch Times and TDTV. But in addition to that, the America needs to speak. Your big officials need to come out and tell the Canadians that you really care about this, and you want Meng Wanzhou extradited to the United States, that you haven't given up on it.
Joel, where can they follow you? Where can people follow you?
Oh, they can find me on Facebook. They follow my name or on Twitter.
Okay,
I'm all
Joel
over the
Etienne,
place.
we'll put it in our show notes for the day on the pandemic.warroom.org website. Joel Etienne, thank you so much for joining us here and walking us through all that. We'll be back with more War Room Pandemic in just 1 second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
So, if you're going to survive 2020, you need to have every advantage at your disposal. NetSuite is one of the advantages that 20,000 companies currently use, smart companies, because NetSuite by Oracle lets you control everything, your financials, your HR, your inventory, your e-commerce, all in one place. No matter what the size of your business, NetSuite gives you the ability to compete with anyone from anywhere, and we're grateful to have NetSuite as a sponsor of this show. If you want to see what they're up to, surveying hundreds of business leaders around the country and coming up with ideas for America's reopening, get your free guide, 7 actions businesses need to take now, and schedule your free product tour at netsuite.com/Bannon. A free guide and a free product tour. netsuite.com/Bannon. We are very grateful for all of you who join us every day on this show, and especially grateful to the people out there who share it with their friends. Whether you're posting links in forums, on social media, in comment sections, whether you're grabbing the clips that we provide on Twitter, on Parler, on YouTube after the show, whether you're sending this out in an email, whether you're sharing the podcast after the show. I know a lot of you listen to it after the fact, not live. Whether you're driving home, commuting home, in the evening, while you're taking your hot baths, whatever you're doing, we're very, very grateful for it. Make sure you're doing it more. That's the call to action that I want from you guys, and we're all very grateful for it. The more people that hear it, the more people that know the truth, the more people that are exposed to the things that the establishment media on the television behind me will not tell you, the more chance we have of saving Western civilization. This is on all of us. It's on all of our shoulders. You are not a spectator. You're not allowed to be a spectator. This is not a spectator sport, and we're not here to entertain you, as Stephen K. Bannon always says. Gentlemen, $1.4 billion in aid payments have gone to dead people, the Government Accountability Office is reporting this morning.
Well, look, this is just a perfect example to me of why this BS idea of voting by mail or voting remotely is not going to work.
That is some Jason Miller level spin. I'll give you that much.
No, look, they just gave $1 billion to dead people. You don't think they're going to send out hundreds of thousands of things to other dead people? We need to take control of our country, people. We have to begin to realize that the opposition does not play by the rules. You're watching this every day as they try to intimidate you. Be American. You are not to be intimidated. You are strong. You stand on the shoulders of giants, people. Start acting like it.
And you're standing on the shoulders of giants. If you let those giant statues get pulled down, guess what? If you're standing on those shoulders, you're getting pulled down too. Greg Mans, breaking from the Capitol.
Yes, we have some good news in terms of action. The House Freedom Caucus is demanding action from Attorney General Barr. In a statement they put out, we call on Attorney General Barr to take full and immediate advantage of all action available to him, including investigations, arrests, prosecution, to thwart vandalizing, defacing churches, national monuments, public property, and looting of small businesses. Mob rule has no place in America.
So hit me with that again. And what they are calling for action from the president, action from the Congress, action. The House Freedom Caucus it's taken us a while. Not in this room, I'm glad to say. But Republicans are finally getting the joke, right? Marching alongside the Democrat Socialists of America, like Mitt Romney does, and saying, putting your fist up and saying Black Lives Matter, when the founders of Black Lives Matter themselves profess to be, quote, trained Marxists, end quote. They're finally getting the joke, Greg.
Exactly. And here on Capitol Hill at 1:30, the House Freedom Caucus, led by Andy Barr, will be giving a press conference to flesh out more details.
Just more breaking as well. Thank you, Citizen Free Press. No thank you, Drudge Report. Breaking on the Washington Examiner, how scarce U.S. taxpayer money could wind up in China's coffers. That's linked to the pandemic payouts as well. We're going to be keeping a keen eye on that story over the course of the day. Gentlemen.
Here's one thing I just want to give a shout out, because we've been protesting over people losing their lives around this country, but I wanted to talk about a beautiful little American angel who was killed over the weekend, Amaria Jones. She was in Chicago with her mother. She was dancing in her living room. Quote from her mother: "She was showing me this dance called TikTok. I turned around and I was looking for her, and she was on the ground reaching out like this, holding her neck. The last thought I have of my baby is her reaching out with blood gushing out of her neck." Now, this girl was shot in her own home by people out on the streets who are creating this mayhem. If this is not terrorism, I don't know what is. I expect the FBI to be out there and clean up what the mayor of Chicago will not.
It's an extraordinary story, and we talked about this the other day with Steve Cortez on the show, talking about the massive spate of shootings in Chicago. And it just reminds you, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't about statistics. This is about people. This is about lives. This is about children. And just an incredibly sad story that you hear. Just tell us once again what was the girl's name?
This young angel's name was Amaria Jones.
It's absolutely incredible. Jim, we only have about a minute left on the show, and I just want to give a shout out to all of our partners as well here on the War and Pandemic at America's Voice, at G News and GTV, on Newsmax in the evenings in the 11 p.m. They do a marvelous roundup of this show, and we're very grateful for it. Everybody out there who's a part of producing and sharing the show. I know we don't often get a chance to thank everyone at America's Voice and beyond for making sure that we can bring you this show, and also to the people out there who are constantly giving us great feedback. We take it, we listen to it, we implement it, we try all of these things across the shows. We will hopefully have you Stephen K. Bannon back in very short order, but in the meantime, we want to make sure that to keep an eye on warroom.org, pandemic.warroom.org. Make sure you're signed up to the newsletter. We'll also be breaking a big story on the National Pulse later on today. That's the nationalpulse.com later on today about the New York Times and how one of the New York Times journalism school bigwigs has been appearing on Chinese state television. We'll get you more details on that tomorrow. In the meantime, have a great Thursday.